You are speaking a language right now that didn't exist 1,000 years ago, not in any form you would recognize. If you went back to England in the year 1000 AD and opened your mouth, the people there would stare at you like you'd fallen from space. And they spoke English. Their English sounded closer to German than anything you've ever heard. So here's the question nobody asks out loud. What is the language you speak today going to sound like in another 1,000 years? What words are going to vanish? What sounds are going to twist beyond recognition? And here's the part that should unsettle you. Whatever answer you imagine right now is almost certainly wrong. Most people assume language just gets simpler. Words get shorter, grammar gets looser, slang replaces formality. That's not wrong. But it's about 1% of the actual story, because language doesn't just drift. It fractures, collides, resurrects, and occasionally does things that have no name yet. Let's start with what we actually know, because what we know is already extraordinary. In 2003, linguist John McWhorter at Columbia University published a framework that changed how researchers think about language change. His central argument: languages don't evolve, they erode. Every generation learns their parents' language imperfectly and passes on a slightly simplified version. This is called simplification drift, and it has been happening without interruption for at least 100,000 years. Old English had 5 grammatical cases. Modern English has 3, and most speakers only use 2. Latin had 6 cases. The Romance languages that descended from it, French, Spanish, Italian, have almost none. Complexity bleeds out, slowly, inevitably. But erosion isn't the whole picture. Something else is always filling the gap. When grammar simplifies, vocabulary explodes. English lost its case system and gained over 170,000 words in active use today. More than any other language on Earth. The language doesn't become less powerful. It trades one kind of precision for another. Now, here is where it gets genuinely strange. In 1994, linguist William Labov at the University of Pennsylvania published results of a 30-year study tracking sound changes in American English in real time. What he found is called the Northern Cities Vowel Shift. In cities like Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland, vowels in everyday words were rotating. Not randomly, but in a specific clockwise pattern. The word caught was starting to sound like cat. The word bit was drifting toward bet. This wasn't slang. It wasn't teenagers being rebellious. It was happening automatically, unconsciously, across millions of people. Language was rewriting itself in real time, and nobody in those cities had any idea. Your vowels are shifting in ways you will never consciously notice. The sounds you use to say ordinary words are not the same sounds your grandparents used, and they won't be the sounds your grandchildren use. Scale that forward 1,000 years and the drift becomes a chasm. But sound shift is only one force. There are 3 others, and the second is the most disruptive force in the entire history of human communication. Contact. When 2 languages collide, something new is born, always. In 1066, Norman French slammed into Old English. The result was Middle English, a hybrid that borrowed Norman words for power and kept Germanic words for the body and the earth. That's why the animal is a pig. But the food on the plate is pork. The farmer spoke Old English. The nobleman who ate it spoke Norman French. Every word in your language carries the fingerprint of a conquest. Today, the contact is not armies. It's the internet. In 2021, linguist Gretchen McCulloch published research showing that online communication is creating new grammatical structures with no precedent in written language history. Lowercase text as sincerity signal, trailing periods as coldness, repeated letters as emphasis. These are not typos. They are grammar, and they are spreading globally across languages faster than any conquest in history. A teenager in Lagos and a teenager in Seoul are developing shared linguistic instincts their grandparents share with no one, never at this speed, never at this scale. Which brings us to the third force, and this one nobody saw coming. In 2016, linguist Jack Grieve at the University of Birmingham tracked the spread of new slang words on Twitter across 3,300 American cities. He found that new words now emerge, peak, and go extinct in a matter of months. The word fleek peaked and collapsed in under 18 months. For most of human history, a new word took decades to spread across a continent. Now it can be globally adopted and abandoned inside a single school year. The velocity of vocabulary change has gone vertical, and that acceleration is not slowing down. Every year the internet gets denser. Every year new words live shorter lives. In 1,000 years, the life cycle of a word might be measured in days. Now here's where the popular reading of all this goes wrong. When linguists first started writing about digital language change, the world ran with the obvious conclusion: English is taking over. One global language is coming. That's not what the data showed. In 2012, researcher Gary Simons at SIL International found that approximately 3,000 of the world's 7,000 languages are endangered. One language dies roughly every 2 weeks. But the linguists studying this don't see a march toward one global language. They see fragmentation. The same internet that spreads global slang also creates micro-dialects, gamer communities, fandom subcultures, regional online spaces. Each one develops vocabulary and grammar patterns completely opaque to outsiders. You already know this is true. There are online communities today where you could read every word and understand 0% of what's being communicated. So the future of language is not one global tongue. It is probably thousands of micro-languages growing inside the shell of old ones. And then there is the fourth force, the one whose full impact is still completely unknown. Artificial intelligence. Right now, billions of people are communicating daily with language models that produce grammatically perfect, emotionally calibrated text. For most of human history, you learned language by absorbing the speech of the people around you, your parents, your village, your city. You are now also absorbing the language of systems trained on hundreds of billions of documents. Not once in 100,000 years of human language has that happened. Linguist Emily Bender at the University of Washington has been tracking what she calls register flattening. AI-influenced writing sanding down regional patterns into a smooth, universal style. The rough edges that make dialects distinctive are getting polished away. The Birmingham vowel shift, the Chicago vowel rotation, the Creole grammar of coastal Louisiana, all facing a homogenizing pressure no previous generation has encountered. The messy, human, imperfect transmission of sound and meaning is being quietly intervened upon. Not stopped, but rerouted. There's one more piece, and it might be the most important one. Language doesn't just carry meaning. It carries thought structure. In 2004, cognitive scientist Lara Boroditsky at Stanford published research showing that the language you speak shapes what you are literally able to perceive. The Cook-Thaayora people of Northern Australia have no words for left and right. They navigate entirely by cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. As a result, they have an unconscious sense of geographic orientation at all times. You do not. You cannot. The Piraha people of the Amazon, studied by linguist Daniel Everett in the 1990s, have no grammatical tense. No past, no future. Only now. Their relationship to time, to planning, to memory. Fundamentally different from yours. This is called linguistic relativity. The structure of your language is also the structure of your reality. So when language changes, what changes with it is not just communication. It's cognition. It's the shape of human thought itself. In 1,000 years, the humans speaking the descendants of English may not just sound different from you. They may think differently. They may perceive time differently. They may have categories of experience for which you have no words and no concepts. And you to them may be just as incomprehensible as a person from the year 1000 would be to you. So put it all together. What do the linguists actually project? By the year 3000, roughly 50 to 90% of today's living languages will be extinct. The surviving major languages will have simplified their grammar while exploding in vocabulary, especially around technology and states of consciousness. Contact between global English and regional languages will produce new creoles with their own internal logic that don't belong to any single tradition. And inside those languages, micro-dialects will bloom and die faster than any generation alive today can imagine. The sounds will have shifted so far that recordings of today's speech will require translation. Your voice, saying ordinary things, "Good morning, I'm tired, I love you," will be archaeology. Come back to where we started. England, year 1000, when a person speaks your language and you hear nothing recognizable. You probably imagine that as loss, a falling away, a degradation of something that was once cleaner and more precise. But that's not what the record shows. Every version of English that has ever existed was fully adequate to the people who spoke it. Every version carried everything they needed to love each other, to argue, to grieve, to invent. Old English wasn't a rough draft of real English. It was the whole, complete language of real, whole, complete human beings. And so is yours. The language you speak today is not the destination of 10 centuries of progress. It is one frame in a film that never stops running. 1,000 years from now, someone will speak a language born partly from the words in your mouth right now. They won't know your name. They won't recognize your accent. They may not share a single grammatical structure with you, but they will be speaking something you started. Every word you say today is a seed that won't know what it became.